Thank you all for joining us today. This is Ty Edwards from W4K-Action, and we are so excited to have Jeanna Repass with us today, Secretary of State candidate, sharing some information about the Secretary of State office and about her running for that office. So thank you so much, Jeanna, for joining us.
Ty, it is a joy to join you. I want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this wonderful group that I'm a big fan of.
And I've met you at several Women for Kansas and other events throughout the community multiple
I didn't know
times
if we
over
were
the
allowed to
last
say I'm a fan of yours too. Ty and I have been girlfriends out on the trail, but
Yes, we've seen each other at many events over the last few months and probably will continue to.
Lord willing.
That's right. Okay, well, to start off, can you tell us about the responsibilities of the Kansas Secretary of State and why you would be a good choice for that office?
Thank you so much for asking. Well, first of all, the Secretary of State in Kansas has two functions. Each state has a little bit of a different functionality, and there are actually some states where the Secretary of State is appointed by the governor and not voted on by the people. But the primary function across more uniformly is to be the chief elections officer, to certify elections, to work with, in the state of Kansas, you work with our county elections officials to make sure that they are executing elections, and then you certify those elections. And really, I guess if I boil it down, it's to make sure that every single eligible Kansan gets to cast a ballot and that ballot is counted. So that's kind of the major functionality. But in Kansas, the second piece of what the Secretary of State says is we are really the arbiter of business filings. We hold your trademarks and your service marks. The Secretary of State also puts their seal of affirmation on birth certificates and marriage licenses and divorce decrees, things like that. But it really is also the place where if you are an entrepreneur, and I love women entrepreneurs, that is the place where you would go to register your licenses, to apply for certain licensures. And then when you were doing your reporting, which is really important in business, women, we are so good at running so many things, including businesses, but, doing your reporting, that is all housed under the Secretary of State's office. So those are the two chief primary functions of the Secretary of State. I guess three things, but those are really the major things the Secretary of State does.
Awesome. And why would you be a good choice for this office?
Well, I will start by saying unashamedly, I'm a woman. I think women are extremely good organizers. But beyond that, I have a background, which I haven't really talked about that much when I'm introducing myself to Kansans, because I really believe I'm on a job interview. I'm asking the people of Kansas to hire me. So from a resume standpoint, I really do talk about my family and my children and what the journey that got me here. But from a business standpoint, I have run major media entities. I have been in corporate media for years. And then I also have a background in not-for-profit work, which lends a lot to working through grants and processes and paperwork. I have been in charge of multi-million dollar media entities, in charge of and responsible for the lives of many staffers that have worked for me. And so I understand how important it is not only to be organized, but to be accountable to not just the people that you work for, but the people who you employ. The other piece of that is that when you're doing not-for-profit work, it really keeps you tied to what's important in the community. It's very humbling work. And I've done it where you've worked for not-for-profits that are literally out begging for grants. And I've done it when you're the not-for-profit who's executing those grants. And so I definitely understand that. And in my corporate background, I was brought in as a fixer. That's what I'm native to Nebraska, but I've been in Kansas now 17 years. But what brought me to Kansas was I have a background being known as a fixer. In corporate worlds, I've come in to fix media entities and groups. And I believe that there's some things that we need to fix in the Secretary of State's office. So I believe I'm very uniquely qualified for that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, so what is your top priority as Secretary of State and how will you achieve that?
Whew. Well, my number one priority as Secretary of State is to ensure that every eligible Kansan votes. I want to get our voting percentage up so that we are, for example, Washington State has an almost 80% voter return, and we need to get ours up. And we've been increasing a little bit, but we need to make sure that that word is out. But number two, it is reinstilling confidence. I believe that we have secure, safe, free from fraud elections, but unfortunately, I know, having been on the trail and even in the primary on the opposite side of the ticket, there were over 200,000 people who voted in the state of Kansas who said that they don't believe that. So that is a top priority for me. It's reinstilling confidence in our fellow Kansans, because without that, we don't have a democracy. Democracy is faith. It really is. It's belief that Ty casts her ballot and that it counts, and that I cast mine and it counts. And when we have people saying, well, I cast a ballot, but it didn't count, or I cast a ballot and someone cast 10, those are the kind of things we're seeing. So we have got to be about, as the Secretary of State, it is my top priority to reinstill confidence in our democracy, because every vote needs to count. One vote, one person, one vote for the voice of Kansas. So that is my number one priority, making sure everyone has access, and then reinstilling confidence in the voting process.
Awesome. Okay. So how will you ensure the integrity and accessibility of voting in Kansas?
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I am smart enough to surround myself with smart people. We have amazing election officials in every one of our 105 counties in Kansas. So the first thing I'm going to do is be meeting with all of them. And I have not gotten to all 105 counties, although some days it feels like it. But when I am the Secretary of State, and I've laid this out, I've actually kind of come up with, I have come up with my team with a plan for the first 100 days in office. And I've diverged just a little because we have an election cycle every year. People don't always know that. Like right now, we're in a gubernatorial and Senate, but we will have civic elections, and then we will be gearing up for the presidential election. So I've got to hit the ground running. But the number one thing I'm going to do is work with each and every one of our county officials and walk through their processes and do, for lack of a better word, a SWOT analysis. What are our strengths? Where are some of our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? And are there any threats we haven't addressed? So we'll be doing a SWOT analysis with our county officials. And then we are going to be taking those recommendations and executing them. I know one of the things people are concerned about are drop boxes. They're very safe. It is really, really hard to steal any votes in the state of Kansas. We have so many checks in place. But we need to go back and look at that process and then reinforce the things we're doing well and find any places where we can improve those.
Wonderful. So how will you foster transparency in the Secretary of State office?
I love this question. And believe it or not, I don't get it as much as I think I should. Number one, the Secretary of State has got to be accessible to the people. Again, I'm on a job interview. I'm asking the people of Kansas to hire me, and then I work for you. And anytime anybody's managed someone else, you're doing constant check-ins to make sure. So we are going to open up a portal on the Secretary of State's office where people have a direct line to a designated staffer. And I'm saying staffer because I don't want people to think, oh, I won't get to them. But it'd be lying if I said I can answer every email. Even as a candidate, I can't. But we would have designated staffers who would address that and elevate anything that they can't address directly to me. Number two, we are going to be, I feel like I'm giving trade secrets here, but we should have an app. Where we do so much of our business on our phones, like, that we have got to make ourselves more accessible. And right now it's very arduous to get through the Secretary of State's website. I don't know if people realize this, but Google Earth, the inventor of Google Earth, lives right here in Kansas, Brian McClellan, and we've got so many great resources that we can tap into to help make it easier for people. If you want to email us or text us or go through your PC or go through the app. And then everything that we do, you shouldn't have to go through 14 PDFs to figure out what the Secretary of State's office is doing. And I don't want to belittle anyone, but I just heard an issue elevated to me 2 weeks ago when I was in Sedgwick County. A county official was trying to get some documentation. And this is exactly a quote. She's like, I finally had to call. And she said, put my foot up there blank to get what I needed. And all they needed was one piece of paper. So we are going to immediately dive into getting accessibility. So, and all of that leads to transparency. There will be nothing we do that the people of Kansas won't have access to. And one last caveat to that. Our current Secretary of State is in violation of CORA, the Kansas Open Records Act, in terms of hiding 45,000 provisional ballots from the people of Kansas. That will never happen when I'm the Secretary. There's nothing that people do in terms of voting that will be hidden or put in secrecy. Nothing, ever.
Awesome. Okay, great. And then lastly, where can voters learn more information about you and your campaign?
Well, first of all, people like you are helping me get my word out. So thank you, Ty. But then I have a great website. It is JeannaRepass.com. I'm going to spell it because my parents did not name me G-I-N-A. That would have made my life so much easier. But it is Jean, J-E-A-N with a N on the end, Jeanna Repass, JeannaRepass.com. Repass for Kansas on Facebook also has a ton of information. But if you go to JeannaRepass.com, that's where my platform is. That's where all the things that we're discussing are there. But also, if you're a Facebook person, Repass for Kansas, at Jeanna Repass on Twitter, but definitely direct people to the website.
That's wonderful. Well, we are going to post this video on the Women for Kansas YouTube channel and on Women for Kansas Facebook so that people will have access to this same material. So I just want to thank you so much, Jeanna, for taking time today to talk to us and for letting people know how they can find more information. So happy campaigning.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having a bad hair day for this.
It's Kansas humidity. We have to accept it. Okay, thank you again.
Wonderful day.
Yep, bye-bye.